Shona. I'm from CSI. I manage the CSI Spadina location, and I will be your guide today and facilitating, though all of the knowledge is on the stage next to me. You're in a space that is a co-working space if you haven't been in here before. We are a community and a launch pad for social mission organizations, basically people who are trying to change the world. And a big piece of what we do as part of that exploration and part of that mission is to look at the way that people are relating to work and help all of the people in this space and our partners outside of the space co-create a new relationship to work. This is why this co-op series was so interesting for us, because the cooperative model might be, we believe in a great extent, is one of the really great models for how we change that relationship to work in the future. So to that end, this session is called Baristas, Clerks, and Geeks, Own Your Own Job. And I'm hoping that all of you have had experience with co-ops in this area, and if not, you're going to learn a lot more about it this time. To my immediate right is Peter Cameron. He's the Development Director of the Ontario Cooperative Association. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much. So I'm glad that some of you were here last time, because I wanted to always set the context. Anytime we talk about co-ops, you ask the question, well, why? Is everything just hunky-dory here, right now? Our economy, everything's fine, the environment's fine, then why are we trying to change the world? Well, of course, it's not fine. And what I depending on the audience, I normally try to find out, where people are at and ask the question, again, why this story of co-ops needs to be told. And I think I did present a few of the slides from last time, and everybody here is familiar with the Occupy movement, the 1%, the 99%. I hope you picked up the stat sheet that I have at the back that actually does do the breakdown of the disparity in Canada between the 1% and the 99%. And with the discussion of inequality finally taking center stage, hopefully it is motivating people to question the present system and actually do something about it. And interesting enough, one of the different sort of ways of framing it is that the struggle between unions and management or ownership, and there's always that sort of that conflict, and it's a necessary conflict. And unfortunately, the media tries to portray big unions, big corporations. Well, we know that not too many union leaders fly to negotiations in private corporate jets. It's a false construct. But regardless, we still need the unions, and I support unions and been a union member. But a co-op is slightly different in the sense that historically, instead of having this thing where we fight, co-ops said, we're going to go away and start our own thing. We're going to go away and start our own companies. We're going to have our own food co-ops, our own banks, our own housing co-ops, our own car co-ops. So, on some level, it's a more positive, creative endeavor. And it's a collective, coming together of people saying, the hell with you and your mess, we're going to do a better job. And so we know the inequality's there. We need to change it. I think, again, I listed off last time the wonderful quote from Linda McQuaig in her book, The Trouble with Billionaires. Part of our problem also, in terms of the media and in our understanding, is people have lost touch with how much money there is out there. We've been brainwashed to think, oh, well, taxes are too high and there's not enough money for all these services. And by the way, government is some evil corporation way over there. It's disconnected from us. No, government is us. Government is ours. It is our collective will. But the trouble is, again, the media and people have fallen into the trap of feeling that it's somebody else. And of course, that's partly because the big money elements, the corporate elements, have taken control of government. You are in the midst of a municipal election in which Ford Nation is trying to take over once again. So, that's sort of the context I wanted to give, and also I wanted to stress the issue about money. if you get a chance, check this book out. The trouble with the concept of money is that, you know, it's hard to get your head around, well, if I had $1 million, well, people know that in Toronto, an average house price is, what, $750,000 now? Some ridiculous price. And she puts it in a bit of a context here. If I gave you $1 every second, just kept giving you $1, how long would it take you to become a millionaire? And again, I said it last time, and some smart, bright light said, oh, it'll take you a million seconds. Well, it is true, 12 days. But if you keep going, how long does it take to become a billionaire? It's 32 years. It is so different. It is so, you know, incomprehensible for most of us. Co-ops can help change the culture and change the system because we're based on a triple bottom line. And again, I was emphasizing money, but the people, planet, and profits, the basis of co-ops, one of the key issues that isn't being talked about enough, except some people are trying more and more around climate change, is the issue of the environment. I mean, China is growing like crazy, but China is polluted like crazy. And, you know, we are again, people probably saw the latest presentations about the lack of, or pardon me, the incredible loss of diversity of life in the oceans and on the planet. People, planet, and profits. The present system is not respecting the planet, as well as, again, not respecting people. So, okay, so that's the context. Co-ops are an option. The official definition of a co-op, people getting together to solve a problem. You name me any issue, any product, any service, I can name you a co-op for it. And the last session we went into more detail about that, but people come together to take on problems, take over, fight back. That's the co-op sort of perspective. There's history to the co-op movement. Again, I don't want to dwell on it here because I think, again, we talked about it last session, but it's been around for 150 years. Plus, 1844 is sort of what we consider the official beginning of the movement in the Rochdale Principles. It was a struggle back then, it's a struggle now. We're not as well known in Canada, but we're known around the world. There's huge amounts of co-op activity around the world. So I'm not going to dwell on this in Nova Scotia. My friend Zach here is from Halifax. He knows about the Antigonish movement. People know about Desjardins, right? If people have heard about Desjardins, it's a fantastic bank out of Quebec. And it was started by this husband and wife in their kitchen because they were sick and tired of having workers and farmers pay ridiculous bank rates. People, if you get that, quintessential liberal magazine, Maclean's, they have just put out another issue. Who earns what? And it's sort of like, ooh, yeah, it's great. Let's talk about it. Isn't it so cool? No, it's not cool when hockey players are making millions, bank presidents are making millions, and nurses and carpenters and regular folks are not. They've worked to try to change that. The heads of credit unions and Desjardins do not make 10.1 million like the CEO of the Bank of Nova Scotia. So in Ontario, as I said, we're not as well known, but there is strong roots of co-ops and the farmers movement, co-ops farming movement. In the 40s and 60s, the credit unions grew, housing co-ops grew in the 70s and 80s. Of course, everybody remembers Mike Harris killed the co-op movement in essence in '95, the housing co-op movement, pardon me. And but it's starting to, there's enough demand now. People are saying we need housing. Housing's part of the key to ending poverty. Well, one of the models to use is housing co-ops. And then in the 90s, we started to see more social services, energy co-ops, renewable energy, car co-ops. And they're all based on these principles. Again, for people who are new, you might not know this. Again, I summarize them as the people, planet, and profits, the triple bottom line, not just a single bottom line. We have these 7 principles, and the key one, they're all key, but democratic member control, 1 member, 1 vote. In a co-op, people vote. In a private corporation, shares vote. You own the majority of shares, you win. It's not a win-win, it's you win because you control. In a co-op, it's 1 member, 1 vote. And number 3, member economic participation. It's about the members actually getting the money. And these are the basic values of a co-op that are behind it. And I challenge anyone there to really sort of disagree with those values. They're pretty rock solid, I think. You know, about democracy, self-responsibility, equality, honesty, openness. And they're articulated. That's the beauty of our movement. It's articulated that if you go, show me a book, show me anywhere where it says capitalism has these values or has 7 principles. There's only one value, and that's return of profit to the owners, to the shareholders. So, the big movement, again, we're not so well known here in Ontario, but worldwide, huge membership. Google it, do your research, you can find out more. These are some of the names. My fellow co-opper, Reba, is going to talk about Urbane Cyclists, and Cullum's going to talk about his new co-op. But these are some of the big names. Again, for people who might not know it, the Co-operators is not just a cute name. It's the co-op movement. So I'm just going to roll through all this stuff because, again, I think you've seen it. It is always good to note, though, anybody who's a soccer player, that Barcelona is actually owned by the community. I don't know if you knew that. And for all those other football players, Green Bay Packers, it's owned by the community. And ironically, and again, it's worth hammering home the message, the other members of the NFL, they passed a ruling that no other team can be owned by the community because they don't like the competition. So, lots of co-ops throughout Canada. Quebec is definitely the home to big time for housing, for co-ops in general. In Ontario, there's our breakdown. There's a sheet at the back that tells you about that. Housing is sort of the main numbers. Financial co-ops, childcare co-ops, agriculture. Why choose a co-op? These are, I think most of you wouldn't be here if you didn't know some of these values and have this understanding, but it is about, buying, having your economies of scale. It's accountable. It helps build stronger communities. People heard about the Heinz plant closing down in Leamington, the Kellogg's plant closing down in London. Those decisions weren't made locally. Those decisions were made at corporate headquarters in New York or wherever. If they were owned by the community or had more community support, those decisions would have been made differently. You still have to make money, but it wouldn't be money at all costs. So there are benefits for co-ops. In terms of your self-determination, there's multiple bottom lines and benefits to member owners. And part of the key about worker co-ops, where I'm working my way towards, is the element of self-determination. Big fact that needs to be spread more widely, the survival rate of co-ops is double private corporations. Why is that? Because people own a piece of the pie. And if you own a piece of the pie, which is what they're always stressing around entrepreneurship, of ownership and stuff, then you're willing to go that extra mile because you feel like you have some control. This study was done twice in Quebec, where they wanted to look at their ROI, wanted to know if it was worth their investment, and they found for 1 year, 5 year, and 10 years, double the success rate. So again, a summary of why co-ops. Here we go, again for people who don't fully understand the model, business is business. The members, the members elect the board of directors. The board of directors sets the policy, hires management, implements whatever the business plan is. So in a consumer co-op, like Mountain Equipment Co-op, there's millions of members. They elect the board. They aren't quite as connected to the business because there's a lot of people in Mountain Equipment Co-op don't even know they're a co-op, right? Oh yeah, I had to pay $5 when I signed up. Well, they're trying to change that. They're trying to create more awareness. Producer co-op, like a farmer co-op, Gailey Dairy, why just sell your milk? Why not create yogurt, butter, cream cheese, make profit all the way along the line, just like any smart corporation does? The difference is the money goes back to the farmers, not to some shareholder in New York. A worker co-op. So a worker co-op is a bit more grounded in the people who are the owners as well as the workers. And they, can be small, can be as many, a minimum of 3 people to start a worker co-op, or it can be huge like Mondragon. Mondragon in the Basque region of Spain, I think they're up to something like 85,000 member owners. So the other option is a multi-stakeholder, which has elements of worker co-op, as well as producer, as well as consumer. People are familiar with the West End Food Co-op here in Toronto. You have a situation where it's got to be a win-win-win, right? The farmers want the highest price, the consumers want the lowest price, and the workers want the highest wage. But for it to work, it's got to be a win-win-win. They got to negotiate. What's the fair price? What's a fair trade? What's the fairness of it? As opposed to, how can I screw you to get the most? How can I pay labor the least? How can I ship the jobs off to Mexico or to China? We just had a small strike in Guelph, my hometown. Fiberglass plant's been there for years. They wanted to negotiate language in the contract for in the strike that was happening between the workers and the management. They wanted basically to have a differential pay wage for new people hired. So the younger, newer people were going to get screwed. Well, the strike was settled. They removed the language. It all seemed to be good. On my way in here, I just heard they announced 106 jobs are moving to Mexico. Capital is global. Labor is not. That's part of the problem. That's why we need worker co-ops. So Larry's going to kill me because Larry, who I work with, who is our GTA rep, always says you cannot have word-heavy slides. But I didn't know at the time that wonderful little kit that hopefully you picked up at the back, it's our sort of a little kit on how to start a worker co-op, Canadian Worker Co-op Federation, starting a worker co-op. It has all this stuff in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mainly focus on the headlines. And that way you don't need to look at all this fine print. So, and Reva and Cullen will also talk about it. So a worker co-op is about you have a need or a service. Car co-op, you need transportation. A bank, you need financial support. You need housing co-op. A worker co-op, you need employment. It's about creating, it doesn't matter what the job is, it's about the control of it, the self-determination. And again, the role of members and board are similar. The board is elected by the members, so you always got to wear 2 hats. You're a member and an owner, but you're also a worker. So when you're on the floor, in quotes, you're not, running around telling people what to do because you're a board member or you're a member. No, you're a worker. The policy is set after the members elect the board. The board determines the policy for the group and then is implemented. So you always got to keep that dual. And again, the difference between other businesses, I'm just, it's repetitive. The difference is the control, that the culture, the nature of it. A lot of us want to work with people. We don't want to work for someone, or we don't want people necessarily working for us. It's about how do we work together and create the best conditions for all in a triple bottom line approach. So can it work for you? Well, if you want to make $1 million, or in the case I outlined earlier, $1 billion, it won't work for you. If you want to work for a fair wage under fair conditions with, other people, it will work for you. There are over 300, these are slightly out of date, these figures. There's over 300 worker co-ops in Canada, several thousand members and employees, because again, People familiar with the Big Carrot? Anybody from the Big Carrot here? No, okay. The Big Carrot, right up on the Danforth, right? They have something like 65, 70 members. And there are a number of part-time people. And so you can transfer after you've fulfilled the conditions of membership to become a member owner. So that's why there's employees plus members. In the States, there's a growing number of worker co-ops. And, you know, because of the, dare I say, because of the economic crisis, all of a sudden, there's a big interest in worker ownership. And two parts. I mean, I like the idea of worker ownership before there's a problem. What's happening a bit in the States and here is that if a company's in trouble and they can't sell it, then they're interested now all of a sudden in selling to the workers. But that's another issue. Big Carrot, Sumac, Urbane Cyclist, our best sex store in Toronto, Come As You Are, Just Us Coffee Roasters, La Siembra Coco Camino, and Together We're Bitter. How am I doing for time?
You have about 5 minutes.
Okay, good. So internationally, Mondragon, huge success. Google Mondragon. It started 56, 5 members. It is now a monster. And it is very successful. And, but again, to be open and transparent, they're not immune to the economic crisis. How many people know the unemployment rate in Spain right now?
Crazy.
Guess.
50.
Yeah, it's like in the 20s, depending official or unofficial, right? But the youth unemployment is 45%. It's horrible, and the whole issue of land and housing prices crashed. Well, one of the main businesses of Mondragon was creating what they call white goods, appliances, fridges, stoves, all those things. Well, people aren't buying. So that business, which was so successful up to all these years, has declared bankruptcy. But the difference in a co-op and a worker co-op approach is those people just haven't been let go like Brian Mulroney promised, free trade's going to be so good for us, and we'll take care of those workers who lose their jobs when the jobs are shipped to Mexico and every place else. And it was total BS because of course they were on unemployment lines. In Spain, what they did was they said, okay, we are going to help you transition. They moved them to other parts of their interconnected businesses, or they went back to school and they helped train them so that when the economy improved again, they'd have their workers there, improved in knowledge, but it's also the solidarity, it's the sense of culture, it's that we are in this together, as opposed to, too bad, you're on your own. So that's a big difference in Mondragon, and it's fantastic. In Italy, it's huge in Italy, northern Italy. Again, there's historical reasons for that, but it is actually, there's a lot of small worker co-ops, but they're interconnected with various regional networks. And ironically, I thought that slide was there. Oh no, it didn't get put in. That it's actually in the Italian Constitution. Cooperatives are actually recognized in the Italian Constitution. Can you imagine if they were in the Canadian Constitution? I would love it. So, anyway, to start or not to start, you've got all the information there. You basically got to go through the same steps. You've got your idea. You've got your, what we summarize here, but it's better articulated in that thing you picked up, developing a co-op. It's on our website. We say there's sort of 10 steps to starting a co-op. It's similar to many businesses, and you'll get more direct information from these two. But you got your business concept, you do your market analysis, you do your price point, all this type of research that you have to do, and your various, whatever the business is, feasibility study first and the business plan that articulates what it is, how you are going to crunch the numbers to see if you can make a profit. And financing, obviously, you can reach out to various forms of financing, and we are really working with the credit unions to really try to push to get better, more accessible financing through our credit union system. And again, I don't think I need to articulate the business plan and putting it all together. it's all standard stuff. And Larry, again, I apologize for the print heavy, but incorporation. We have a couple of lawyers here in the audience, and they're very helpful, but actually the actual incorporation process, if you go to FSCO, the Financial Services Commission of Ontario, they have templates. You can go to our website, there's stuff there that will assist you. You need 3 people to start a worker co-op, you need 5 to start a consumer or producer co-op. So it's not that hard. And FSCO has become way more service friendly. It is not, we still haven't convinced the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade to be more co-op supportive. In Quebec, huge support, huge interest in starting co-ops, and in particular worker co-ops. We're not there yet, but we're working on it.
So what's FSCO?
Financial Services Commission of Ontario, pardon me for not saying that. That is the body, the regulator. That is the group that we incorporate with, and it's under the Ministry of Finance, okay? And cooperative decision-making, board of directors, your meetings, your committees, again, not that dissimilar to any corporation, any organization. It's just a different approach. It's got to be a win-win. It's got to be based on the triple bottom line. You've got to have your policies, your bylaws, your policies. The bylaws help your organization move through. You've got to have your record keeping. You have to file with the FSCO, the Financial Services Commission of Ontario, whenever you change your directors. This is all really detailed stuff that I just don't think we need to get into right now. And the only thing I just wanted to make sure that, again, the multi-stakeholder is an interesting option, and it might, well, not might, I think it will be a more useful model for people in the future, because it provides that opportunity for different stakeholders to have a say. And it's a model that could be very useful. That's the FSCO, Financial Services Commission of Ontario. And again, I stress they have incredible amount of useful information on their site, and you can just check that out yourself. So, I don't think I need to go on anymore. I think I've hit my limit.
You have, but
And but we can do question and answer later. I'm sorry if I rushed through stuff, but I hope I provided you a context to the real hardworking, making it reality people who will speak next.
we've actually got 10 minutes for you to do questions right now, if
Oh.
you're comfortable doing that, and we'll take some time to do the setup for the next one as well. Does anybody have a question? I'm sure there are lots of questions. Who has a question for Peter to start off with? Go ahead.
How co-op's taxed?
Tax the same as a private corporation. If you're a for-profit co-op, thank you for allowing me that segue into that. In a co-op, there are with share co-ops. When you incorporate with share or without share. And normally without share would be a non-profit, even though I hate that term non-profit, because you got to make a profit. The question is who controls the profit. And then with share is for-profit, and that would be most worker co-ops. Because you're trying to create employment, and the idea is that you get your money from the wage that you're paid in the worker co-op, but the profit also is a way, you can have shares in your corporation, that's another way for you to get surplus or profit.
One of those isn't taxed, or there's something different about the taxation of the shares of a co-op?
There's the difference between the co-op paying the taxes
Okay.
and you individually paying the taxes. So if you get shares from the co-op, then you have to declare that, and they are not taxed by the co-op. That's,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Any other? Mm-hmm.
Bob?
Hey, Peter. Just wondering, do you know of worker co-ops that are providing like shares as part of the compensation package to workers?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we'll be talking about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do some of that.
Actually, there's no need for just me. If you want to, go ahead, answer, yeah.
Yeah, so for our profit sharing, which we really just set up recently. We finalized it last year. At the end of the year, we figure out, well, the beginning of the next year, when we closed our books, we figure out what our profit is. 50% of it goes into the retained earnings of the co-op, and 50% gets divided up among the members based on hours worked for the year. And we convert it into preference B shares. And the individual is taxed on that at their individual rate, and then they have B shares. And then during the year, we take a look at what our financial position is, what our cash flow is like, and we decide whether we're going to redeem any of those shares and pay out any of that in cash. And we're also trying to make sure that we balance the amount of B shares that each member has. So one member who's been there longer doesn't actually have have a lot of B shares, and the newest member only has a small amount. So we're trying to work on that. So that'll balancing act.
So follow up to that is, so it sounds to me like what you're doing is the issuance of shares in that situation is dependent upon the profit you've made at the end of the year. So you're not telling employees that their compensation package is a mix of salary and shares. It's salary and maybe shares pending results.
Yeah, but some co-ops will, some of their wage will go straight into shares.
Okay.
I believe Camino La Siembra, which is own the brand Camino, so the chocolate bars and sugar. Part of their wage goes straight into their shares, is what I understand, and so they would have it set up in a different way. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I think I take your point that starting one up is pretty similar to starting any other corporate entity, but I'm wondering, with it being a sort of collective effort, in what ways is that process? You've got lots of different voices who are trying to search for some of these answers. Can you give me a flavor for that? It might just be a prompt.
Well, again, I think it is similar. I mean, let's take, 5 women sitting around deciding they're going to start up a design and web company. You still want to, clarify roles, who's doing what, who's helping to, set up the web page, who's helping to form the feasibility study, the business plan, and you have meetings to talk about that. And, at an early stage, we would, if you needed our assistance, for instance, we would help with maybe helping to chair, sort of training people and chairing meetings and decision making, and making sure, because some people, you can assume too much. There's some people who've never been in an actual meeting, never voted on something, but creating that democratic process. The one thing, though, that your question has allowed me to hit upon is the whole issue of sweat equity, because in the initial founding members, there's something called the founder syndrome, where the hardcore 3 or 5 people, they start the business, and then along comes Johnny-come-lately Peter, 2 years later, after all this groundwork's been done and this fantastic beer co-op's been laid in, and I join, and I all of a sudden have a vote equal to Cullum. Where's sort of the equity and the fairness in that? You got to have some way of compensating those early people. And one of the ways we've done that is with something called sweat equity, where you agree upon a certain dollar amount per hour, let's say, and you record those. And I really encouraged Cullum and his members to do that. And you don't make it informal. You make it formal. It's like a wage, because even though you can't guarantee you're going to get that back, you'll at least have some way of recognizing it, so that, for instance, let's just say for the sake of argument, I put in 1,000 hours, and you calculate that out at a certain dollar wage. So therefore, when we incorporate and stuff, I'm issued, 200 shares at whatever value we decide they're at, $25 a share or something. So that then Cullum is given that. And then when Johnny-come-lately, when I come in, I'm starting out fresh, I have to purchase some of those shares. But you see what I'm saying? He gets that recognition.
Peter, can I jump
Yeah,
in?
yeah.
So to the first question you asked about how the process works of starting up, we're doing that right now. So we basically have meetings every week, a 2 to 3 hour meeting every week where the founding directors come together and discuss projects that we're working on and leave with action items. We take minutes, we record our sweat equity, and so it's essentially a long, hard slog, and I'll get into it a bit in my presentation, but the real interesting or the important thing is that there is if it's done right, and Peter's helped us set a solid foundation, it's a lot easier than starting your own company by yourself or your own for-profit company by yourself. And we've talked to a lot of the brew pub and breweries around and found that we have an advantage in terms of we have selected Alex here as our communications director. I'm the brewers and also the point person for developing the business plan and sort of just generally the point person. And we have a couple tradespeople that are going after the properties and looking at development. So it is a real division of labor that helps, as our name indicates, together we're better, that helps us do things that we couldn't do otherwise by ourselves. So, and to Peter's point about sweat equity and starting up the co-op, we've been recording our sweat equity hours. One of the interesting things we're facing now is long-term recognition. We've seen a lot of issues around long-term recognition of founders and trying to mitigate that. So we're trying to work out something a little bit more innovative, and we're just in the beginning stages of talking about sort of that recognition long-term for the founding directors. So it's because a lot of us have been giving up a lot of our social lives and a lot of our professional lives for 2 years to do it. So we've tried to find a way to balance equity and equality in the latter half, so as not to have resentment of, as Peter said, the founder syndrome, resentment of people down the road. So we're working to address that. So and learning the lessons from other co-ops that we've talked to.
I actually have one. You said that there's been a surge in the interest in co-ops, particularly in Europe post-economic downturn. In your opinion, do you feel like the co-op model offers an opportunity for workers to feel more secure in their jobs and also possibly more protection from the vagaries of the larger economic system as it seeks a way to shift that economic system?
I take that as a rhetorical question. Yes. I mean, it doesn't guarantee it by any means, but it allows you to have some control. I think our education system, our culture, our brainwashing has been you be good little worker bee. You just follow orders. As opposed to, well, actually, you have rights, but you also have responsibilities. So you don't have to know all the vagaries of the balance sheet, but you've got to know basics. You've got to know that if you demand a wage increase here, that means something goes there. I mean, you've got to balance that stuff out. So by having the rights and responsibilities, you feel you understand your situation, you have a little more grounding in it, you have a little more confidence in it, and dare say you're willing to go the extra mile because you own a piece of the pie.
I'm Peter Cameron. I'm the Co-op Development Manager with the Ontario Co-operative Association. We're the trade association for all co-ops and credit unions in Ontario. We help with co-op development, we do education work, we do government relations. We are trying to promote the cooperative model because we think it is a fair, better model for our environment and for our economy. Well, I really enjoyed the questions, obviously. Clearly lots of interest and engagement, and with my presentation sort of backed up by real concrete experience of Reba and Cullum, I think it went very well. Well, I think the main point is that the model is successful, it's working, and it is a way to change the culture of business to a more triple bottom line, a fair for all the various stakeholders, and in particular with this session, worker co-ops, that people can actually control their fate. they can create employment that will allow them to help, they can participate in their own work environment and future.